Well, first of all, there's a lot of press about declining defense budgets in the Western world, primarily the U.S. and Western Europe. But the contradiction in that is that combat aircraft spending is increasing. We are in the midst of a recapitalization of worldwide combat aircraft fleets, multi-role combat airplanes, air combat fighters, long-range strike aircraft, and to a lesser degree, combat helicopters. It's really, there's a growth, we're on a growth curve that'll result in a substantial expansion in sales of combat aircraft for the next 10 to 15 years. Governments are trying to economize. They are shrinking their budgets in many cases, but historically and today, those same nations are trying to preserve their air combat capabilities. In other words, what the shooter has at his or her disposal. So there's a number of other issues as well. The world combat fleets are getting old, very old. We have airplanes that are over 50 years of age. We have average fleet ages in the U.S., for example, of 25 to 30 years for our leading fighters. So obsolescence and age is a major issue. There are also geopolitical issues. Regional threats are growing in places like the Middle East, and in response to that, Middle Eastern nations in the Gulf, Saudi Arabia, Israel, are all adding new combat aircraft capabilities to their fleets. In Asia, we have a response to Chinese expansion and potential threats from North Korea. So we have major combat aircraft purchases from places like Japan, North Korea, Singapore, Malaysia. It's really quite a booming market when you look at it in depth. Well, it's interesting. When stealth airplanes first were introduced back in the early 90s, the B-2, the assumption was we'd never be able to afford more than a few of these birds because the B-2 was so expensive. That followed with the F-22, the air dominance fighter, which was a truncated program at 187 units. The F-35 is the next generation of stealth, but it's more than just low radar cross-section. It's more than the inability of opposing radars to see the airplane. It's the sensors, it's the weapon systems that really set this airplane apart. And as these airplanes are introduced by the United States and its partners, it creates a counter response from both adversaries and other allies and people who are in the market for combat airplanes. And so the F-35 is the benchmark, and other nations are trying to strive to match that capability. China and Russia in particular are developing their own stealth airplane capabilities. Additionally, the F-35 has contributed, I believe, and will contribute to the sale of non-US airplanes. The Eurofighter Typhoon, for example, has shown itself to be an incredibly capable companion to American stealth aircraft, the F-22 in particular. It really outshone many aircraft during exercises with the US Air Force in 2012 and 2013. So even though the F-35 is the largest fighter program in the world, there are partnering capabilities. Since our allies operate not only F-35s, but they'll be operating Eurofighters and Rafales and other types of airplanes. That airplane that can speak and interoperate with American fighters is going to be a significant sales success in the future. And we're already seeing that in the Middle East and other parts of the world. The United States, you see a flat or declining, slightly declining total military aircraft market for the next 10 years. But the multi-role combat section of the forecast is growing. And you'll see that in every other part of the world. You'll see that in all of the slides, that strike airplane sales is growing. And it's going to continue to grow for the next 10 to 15, even 20 years.